This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The second Belt and Road Forum begins in Beijing with a focus on making concrete progress on big projects. A number of Southern African countries bracing for another potentially devastating tropical storm. And Russian president meets the DPRK leader in Vladivostok. Hello and welcome to Africa Live from Nairobi. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up this hour, the challenges facing Eskom and possible solutions to mitigate South Africa's inconsistent power supply. And the latest on efforts to forge an agreeable political transition process in Sudan. The second Belt and Road Forum officially kicked off on Thursday. A big focus of the forum this year is making concrete progress on big projects, pushing plans from blueprint to reality. This morning saw 12 sub-forums, each focused on one topic. Our reporter Xia Cheng interviewed some participants at the CEO conference. Let's see what's special about this year's agenda.
It's the first CEO conference for China's Belt and Road Forum. Some 900 business leaders are coming to show their commitment to the initiative. They represent global Fortune 500 companies and Chinese firms doing well overseas.
The Belt and Road marks a good time for Chinese companies to go global. Some of the emerging markets are still in the middle of industrialization. That also gives Chinese companies opportunities. Countries now are working on digitalization. Chinese companies have a solid foundation in telecoms and the internet, allowing them to test overseas markets.
Italy is the first G7 member country to join the Belt and Road, but that's mainly for the infrastructure investment opportunities. As for the digital Silk Road, the list of members remains short, and China continues to work to get more power players on board. And it is critical to do so for the sake of global digital governance.
Because for digital Silk Road, it is about the evolution of the digital economy, but it is at the same time, it is also about the evolution of the digital governance. If we think about the fact that the digital economy has very strong economic scale, and the fact that China and the G7, in particular the US, are the largest digital economy in the world, then by definition, they will have the most influence on the development of future digital economy and the global cyberspace community. So therefore, it is not only should or would, I think it is almost a must that for G7, in particular for the US, the largest digital economy in the world, to be part of this global conversation.
What's holding investors back is a lack of trust in the Belt and Road. That includes concerns over debt, the environment, and local economic impact. What's the best way to win the hearts of countries and big companies?
To me, the most important thing to clarify all these, let's say, misconceptions is through successful projects. Through these successful examples, people will see first, it really brings convenience and benefits to the local community, and secondly, it's affordable. It's not just some exhibition projects. It's a real thing. And finally, when it is being used and being popular in the market, it generates very strong cash flow. So the issue about sustainability of debt financing is also out of the window.
There are also many Chinese entrepreneurs at the Belt and Road Forum. Let's hear what some of them have had to say.
We will connect with all the other countries in the Belt and Road Initiative to achieve the international industrial standards. This will greatly increase trade and investment in the world and promote the sharing of advanced technology among all mankind.
We acquired the largest ice cream company in Thailand. This company also has businesses in many countries around Thailand. After the acquisition, our Chinese brand will be able to enter the markets in Southeast Asia more quickly.
We have signed a contract with Poland's Elliott company for 300 planes. mainly for our aviation development and the training schools. The total amount of these projects can reach nearly 1 billion yuan.
Infrastructure is a key driver for progress and economic growth in Africa, but the continent's vast infrastructure deficit remains a constraint on its growth. The Belt and Road Initiative is, however, creating a fresh wave of investment in Africa's road, rail, port and energy infrastructure, making the continent more connected internally and with the outside world. CGTN's Beatrice Marshall looks at how China's Belt and Road Initiative is helping shape and advance Africa's development priorities.
Over the last decade, China has spent billions of dollars constructing roads, railways, ports and industrial economic zones in Africa, aimed at boosting the continent's trade and development. And at the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, or FOCAC summit last year, China announced a new $60 billion fund towards the continent's development in 8 areas. Key among these were industrial promotion and infrastructure connectivity.
It's geared towards bringing on board everyone. The current trend of development on planet Earth is a development that cannot afford to leave anyone behind. And I believe that's what China is trying to promote.
The Belt and Road Initiative is forging economic, political and security linkages between China and Africa. Already, East Africa, through Chinese funding of ports, roads and railways, has developed into a central part of the maritime Silk Road. In the north, the Egyptian Suez Canal's economic zone is integrating with China's Belt and Road Initiative to boost connectivity and global trade. And the Chinese-funded Djibouti-Addis Ababa Railway is connecting Ethiopia to the maritime trade routes of the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea. Alongside these, the African Union's Development Agency, NEPAD, recently unveiled an ambitious multi-billion project, the African Integrated High-Speed Railway Network, aimed at connecting African capitals by building and improving existing national networks.
Belt and Road is a mechanism very important for Senegal because it is developing highway and links between regions. As we built a highway from Dakar to Touba and Dakar Arena in the locality of Diamniadio.
The Maritime Silk Road will establish economic passages through a chain of seaports from the South China Sea to Africa that will direct trade to and from China. Already, about 37 African countries have signed documents on the Belt and Road Cooperation. The Belt and Road Initiative is also happening at a time when the African Continental Free Trade Area, the CFTA, is set to come into force, bringing with it a market of 1.2 billion people and the promise of greater trade with China.
I think it facilitates a greater connectivity between the different countries. I think also, for example, it's very difficult to transport things between the countries, so it will make that easier and the connection will also be easier.
It is estimated that Africa will need over $100 billion annually for 10 years to meet its infrastructural requirements. Now, the African Development Bank says that if Africa positions itself well, it can source some of this from the One Belt, One Road initiative and channel it to the African Union's master plan. So through the One Belt, One Road initiative, Africa's interests are converging with China's. And in the process, they are helping to shape and advance Africa's development priorities. Beatrice Marshall, CGTN, Beijing, China.
Chinese President Xi Jinping met Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta today as the 2019 Belt and Road Forum is held in Beijing. President Xi said he has met President Kenyatta 3 times in less than a year, which reflects the strategic relationship between the two countries. He also pointed out that China wants to strengthen cooperation with Kenya on important projects and encourage more Chinese companies to invest in Kenya. President Kenyatta congratulated China's great achievements, especially in lifting 700 million people out of poverty. He said that Kenya is willing to deepen cooperation on infrastructure and make the Belt and Road Initiative stretch to Middle and Western Africa. The two leaders also witnessed the signing of bilateral agreements on cooperation. Ethiopia is a major beneficiary of Chinese-funded infrastructure. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has hailed China's support in transforming the economy of his country.
China has been supportive during our one-year reform journey. China has changed many of our commercial loans to concessional loans. As a sign of commitment, China has given Ethiopia lots of grants to boost its economy. China and Ethiopia share strong ties and a promising future. Government of China has been and continues to be our biggest supporter. Ethiopia has accepted so much Chinese infrastructure involvement. For example, the Chinese government is our biggest supporter in Addis Ababa beautification project, and that is grants, not even a loan. I must express gratitude towards the Chinese government, its commitment as we look forward to stronger ties.
Many analysts in Africa have hailed the Belt and Road Forum, saying the initiative will have economic and strategic significance for participating states. Let's now get some perspective from Senegal.
Africa is seeing opportunities flowing from China's Belt and Road Initiative. The theme of the current ongoing forum is to build one belt, one road, and create a better future. A statement analysts feel resonates well with China's commitment of promoting multilateralism and global cooperation.
The number of participating countries in the Belt and Road Initiative is growing because at the beginning there were only 6 countries and later it grew to more than 80. Today there are hundreds of countries involved. In particular, the forum is held in the context of 2 opposing economic ideologies, namely multilateralism and isolationism, that we will talk about.
The Senegalese scholar sees economic growth in his country under the initiative. Senegal is the first West African country to sign the One Belt, One Road cooperation document with China.
In the context of international cooperation today, the world has become a global village because of globalization, and it also faces common problems. Take environmental issues as an example. It's already a problem for everyone in the world. If there is no international cooperation between countries, this will be a disaster. Now, China's cooperation in this area can be said to be in a leading position. For example, China has implemented the commitments of the Paris Agreement and has also made important initiatives in environmental protection.
The Senegalese scholar sees a bright future for his country under the initiative.
I believe that the Senegal Emergent Plan will find an opportunity in signing the Belt and Road Cooperation document, and Senegal can become an emerging country by 2035.
The Belt and Road Initiative seeks a win-win development cooperation among participating states. Chomhono, CGTN.
And for more on this, we're joined by Ken Gishinga, the Chief Economist at Mentoria Economics here in Kenya. Ken, thank you very much for joining us. What's your expectation from the second Belt and Road Forum that's underway in Beijing?
Thank you for having me. I think this is a major opportunity for China to remind the world that the BRI initiative is really about global economic cooperation, because there have been some voices that suggest that it's a geopolitical play, it's a military play. So this is an opportunity for President Xi Jinping to really remind the world that this is all about greater economic cooperation and countries working together.
And speaking about greater economic cooperation, how is China helping African economies or countries realize their economic development agenda?
It's doing it in a variety of ways. Number one, it's opening up its domestic markets. You remember in Shanghai last year, there was a China import conference.
Export, yeah.
Exactly, and China was really saying to the world that we want to be importing more goods from the rest of the world. And from Africa, this means agricultural produce, tea, coffee, flowers, all the things that we export to Europe, China wants to have. So that can really support these, especially countries like Kenya, which have been traditionally looking towards Europe. This can present new market opportunities for such countries.
Right. And talking about infrastructure, what is it that African countries can do to ensure that such infrastructure projects benefit their citizens in a sustainable way?
Well, the important thing is to make sure that the loans that are coming to construct infrastructure are strictly directed towards infrastructure, because there has been some skepticism that some of this money gets into via corruption, gets into private pockets. So countries don't realize the full gains of the infrastructure developments, yet have to service huge debt. So I think from a governance perspective, there's a feeling that we need to have tighter controls. We need to make sure that every cent that is got from Beijing is put into the actual infrastructure projects it was meant to.
Accountability. And what about the major economic challenges facing African countries that might be addressed using Chinese-led platforms such as the Belt and Road Initiative?
Well, if you look at globalization, what I call globalization 1.0, much of it has been centered around the West. And really, African countries never really felt they were part of that globalization. What we have now is an opportunity for greater South-to-South cooperation. So more African countries feeling they're part of a new globalization via connections of roads and railways and airports and bridges. That might lead to the world to feel that finally we are approaching more balanced growth. Finally, the benefits of globalization can be enjoyed by every country and not just a few countries. And possibly inequalities might actually start reducing between countries.
All right, Ken, thank you very much for that. Ken Gishinga, Chief Economist at the Mentoria Economics here in Kenya, speaking to us. Now to Egypt, which is also playing a crucial role in the Belt and Road Initiative due to its strategic position between Africa, the Middle East and Europe. CGTN's Yasser Hakim sheds light on the significance of the Suez Canal to the Belt and Road and how Egypt will benefit from such a mega initiative launched by Chinese President Xi Jinping.
The Suez Canal has witnessed a huge upgrade in the last 3 years. The waterway was widened and several economic zones and industrial areas were established to serve the trading vessels passing through.
هناك أكثر من 192 شركة عالمية بتعمل في تلك المنطقة.
There are 192 international companies working on developing the area. There are 3 main logistical seaports that serve 20,000 trading vessels that pass through the Suez Canal every year. There are silos, bunkering services, and industrial zones around the ports, with 68 factories so far, including Chinese from different sectors. Petrochemicals, textiles, real estate, and water desalination, among others. They're all benefiting from the services provided from the project.
The Suez Canal is seen as one of the focal points of the Belt and Road Initiative.
The Suez Canal can become a hub for the Belt and Road because of its location linking Asia, Africa and Europe from the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. Chinese goods would pass through at a faster rate after the upgrade of the canal. But also, Chinese companies are beginning to establish plants around the Suez ports. They manufacture products to be exported to the rest of Africa, the Middle East and Europe, making use of Egypt's free trade agreements with these markets.
The close ties between Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has given an impetus to the cooperation on the Belt and Road Initiative. Egypt sees the Belt and Road as an opportunity to boost its own economy.
Since the Belt and Road was launched, Chinese investments in Egypt rose by over 75%. The Chinese president has also pledged another $40 billion to invest in the country as part of the initiative. China has poured funding for energy projects in Aswan, railway transportation, infrastructure, and 2 industrial zones in Egypt.
All these Chinese investments and trade cooperation based on the Belt and Road Initiative are creating job opportunities, increasing state revenue, and supporting an economy that has suffered from years of instability. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
And for more on the Belt and Road Forum, we are joined in Beijing by CGTN correspondent Gurum Chala. Gurum, the Belt and Road Forum has started there in Beijing. What's the latest and how is the attendance likely to be like?
Well, Peninah, here in Beijing, several heads of state and governments and also ministers and other stakeholders are already coming together for this important second Belt and Road Initiative Forum. The second of its type, by the way, is an important one this time around because the world is now getting the feel and the taste of the Belt and Road Initiative itself. So everyone is looking forward to attending most of the meetings happening here at the level of experts, at the level of ministers, and also other stakeholders. Meetings are taking place here and there, and as you can see behind me, journalists are also busy taking every information they can get and feeding it to their respective media houses. So it's getting warmer, and we expect it to be even better in the coming few days.
Girum, what should we expect in the coming days?
Well, the Belt and Road Initiative itself, and now the forum, it's about cooperation, it's about coming together. And for most of the countries which are part of this forum and part of the initiative itself, it's about developing, building infrastructure for a shared, brighter future in the world. So everyone is looking forward to the deliberations, and remember, every country which is part of the Belt and Road Initiative wants to get something out of this so that it can also have a cumulative effect for the growth and development of respective countries, regions, and generally the whole world. So that's the initiative at the end of the day. So in the coming few days, we expect robust, stronger discussions on investment, on financing, on infrastructure development, energy development, and other issues. So, I mean, we are waiting for lots of discussions to happen, which can change, indeed, the rest of the world and China as well.
All right, Girum Chala, live there in Beijing. Many thanks, Girum.
6 years on, what is the state of the Belt and Road? And how is the progress?
Where are the challenges? Who is building, connecting, and benefiting?
Our global correspondents bring you personal insights, live business reports,
interviews with the major players, investigation and analysis.
For comprehensive coverage of the Belt and Road Forum, stay tuned to CGTN.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and the leader of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Kim Jong-un, have met for the first time. The meeting took place at Russia's Far Eastern Federal University on Russky Island off the port city Vladivostok. Kim's first trip to Russia comes about 2 months after his second summit with US President Donald Trump, which ended without an agreement due to disputes over sanctions. After a one-on-one meeting, the Putin-Kim summit will be followed by broader talks involving officials from both sides.
I am sure that your visit to Russia today will help to develop bilateral relations and will help us understand how to reach settlement over the Korean Peninsula, what we can do together, what Russia can do to support the positive processes that are going on right now. We welcome your efforts to develop the inter-Korean dialogue and to normalize the relations between the DPRK and the United States.
As you said, I too hope that our meeting with you, Mr. President, will be useful for strengthening and development of traditional friendly relations between the DPRK and Russia, which run deep. And I would like to say the situation on the Korean Peninsula is attracting the interest of the entire international community. I hope that our talks will become an important milestone to sum up the situation, exchange opinions about it, and to negotiate a resolution together.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a quick break. Here's what's still ahead. A number of Southern African countries bracing for another potentially devastating tropical storm. And the latest on efforts to forge an agreeable political transition process in Sudan.
On May 8th, 27 million South Africans go to the polls. Africa's most industrialized nation is just emerging from recession and still faces enormous economic challenges. Join us on Global Business Africa for a week of in-depth coverage and analysis on the state of the country's economy, a different perspective of events shaping South Africa. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's now bring you an update on another tropical storm expected to cause havoc in southern Africa. Cyclone Kenneth has already hit the Indian Ocean French island of Mayotte with strong winds and heavy rain. The cyclone is set to make landfall in Mozambique later in the week, raising concerns because the country is still dealing with the devastating aftermath of Cyclone Idai.
Cyclone Kenneth brought downpours and strong winds to the island of Mayotte. The island nation shut down its airports and schools.
We were told that the airport has been closed and the barges too. So we spent the whole day and today stranded and confined to the hotel.
Elsewhere on the island, residents dealt with fallen trees and damaged houses. Those living in shanty towns were hardest hit by the storm.
It has been very difficult for this kind of neighborhood. It's going to be hard for these people to remain here, which is why most of them are taking refuge at the school.
We are dealing with an extremely underprivileged population. Their houses are made out of sheet metal that is not exactly strong or very well secured.
Cyclone Kenneth is expected to make landfall in Mozambique. The country has been dealing with the aftermath of Cyclone Idai, which affected nearly 2 million people in Mozambique. Mozambique's National Institute for Disaster Management estimates Cyclone Kenneth will put nearly 700,000 people at risk. Astatal, CGTN.
Comoros has also been hit by Cyclone Kenneth. Strong winds caused landslides and flooding, cutting off roads. No injuries have been reported. Schools have been closed and the inter-flight island hoppers suspended. The country's interior minister urged citizens to stay calm and follow instructions. Meanwhile, authorities in Tanzania have told citizens to prepare for powerful thunderstorms and severe flooding because Cyclone Kenneth may also pass through the southern parts of the country bordering Mozambique. Winds with a speed of up to 180 kilometers per hour and heavy rain are expected over the next 48 hours in that region. The country's meteorological agency has issued a national warning for the tropical storm. The statement said the storm continues to get stronger as it passes the Comoros Islands, heading towards the border between Tanzania and Mozambique. The storm is expected to become a level 6 cyclone. Residents have been told to seek refuge on higher ground and to expect damage to their houses and farms. Schools and workplaces in Mtwara have been directed to remain closed today.
Although there might not be many, but nowadays we have to be more careful on the systems because they are more energetic, because the ocean is giving more favorable conditions for their formations and for their strength.
Even the very powerful countries, when they're impacted with these systems, they distract whatever they have. So the best way is listening the command, the order from the government, which has already prepared themselves how to handle this kind of catastrophe.
Let's now turn to our continued coverage of the transition in Sudan. The country's ruling Transitional Military Council and a section of the opposition have agreed to form a committee to resolve their differences. This follows tensions over how long it will take to move the country to civilian administration after Omar al-Bashir's ouster. The Transitional Military Council and the opposition have in recent days been on a coalition course over popular demands for democratization and a civilian government. While the opposition demands a swift power handover to civilians, the Transitional Military Council has maintained the process could take up to 2 years.
We are partners and we are working together to bring the country towards the shore of peace. And our goal is to place peaceful foundations for the building of Sudan.
The common responsibility between the Freedom and Change Forces and the Military Council has been emphasized, as well as the leadership provided by the Freedom and Change Forces towards the revolutionary movement. The fruitful role of the armed forces towards protecting the people has also been emphasized. It has also been agreed that a joint council is to be formed to discuss the transitional arrangements and the legitimacy of different frameworks and units.
Meanwhile, legislators in the Democratic Republic of Congo have voted a former minister in the government of ex-President Joseph Kabila as the leader of the National Assembly. Jeanine Mabunda was elected unopposed after MPs rejected the candidacy of her main challenger, Thomas Lokondo. CGTN's Christo Chamringa has more from Kinshasa.
Celebrations after MPs voted Jeanine Mabunda to head the National Assembly. She's a former minister who was charged with reforming public enterprises during Joseph Kabila's tenure. Jeanine Mabunda also served as the former president's special advisor on combating sexual violence. Many Congolese women consider her election as a new dawn because they've been underrepresented at decision-making levels for decades.
One of our own has been chosen. I know she will do a great job. We are going to support her in every way.
I used to wonder when a Congolese woman will ever take up such a top position. Today I consider Jeanine's election my own victory and that of all other women.
Mabunda's election follows months of disagreements between President Tshisekedi and former leader Joseph Kabila's coalition over the choice of senior government officials. She won the vote as a sole candidate after MPs from Joseph Kabila's coalition, Common Front for Congo, rejected her rival's candidacy. Members of Mr. Kabila's party are optimistic that Ms. Jeanine Mabunda will effectively moderate debates in parliament as the new speaker.
Mabunda has been praised by all who have worked with her. She has a good profile and she is a good mother.
Early this year, President Tshisekedi signed a power-sharing deal with Joseph Kabila following a stalemate over the appointment of a prime minister. Mr. Kabila's Common Front for Congo has the majority in parliament. Under DRC law, the party with the most seats gets to choose the premier. Congolese are still waiting for President Tshisekedi to name a prime minister. Jeanine Mabunda's election makes her the first woman to head the DRC's National Assembly. She'll be working closely with President Tshisekedi's confidant, Marc Kabund, under a power-sharing deal with former President Joseph Kabila. Christo Chamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
In news just in, former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden has formally declared his intention to contest the presidency. In his announcement, he said the core values of the American nation were at stake. The 76-year-old now enters a very crowded race for the 2020 Democratic nomination ahead of the U.S. presidential election. The United Nations is assisting Kenya and Ethiopia in trying to find peace between their border communities. Historical rifts over issues such as competition for pasture has led to heightened tension. Coletta Wanjohi reports from Addis Ababa.
These Kenyans and Ethiopians share Oromo culture and even traditional leaders. However, there is also insecurity between their communities.
The causes of conflict are complex and intertwined with poverty, ethnic, and sometimes religious tensions, as well as disputes over boundaries, competition over scarce resources, such as pasture and water, inadequate policing and state security, the collapse of traditional governance systems, and wider geopolitical interests.
Leaders from both countries have been meeting in Addis Ababa. They admit there is rising insecurity along the borders of Moyale, Kenya, and Moyale, Ethiopia, South Omo in Ethiopia, and Turkana in Kenya. The Somali regional states of Ethiopia and Marsabit County of Kenya have also been affected.
It's not our intention to see one person killed in any part of our country, let alone in these two brotherly communities where the conflict actually has taken a dimension of fratricide. This was the brothers killing each other.
Those who are hustling animals, if they get an alternative, then they see it is a very high cost to go back to that dangerous trade. But of course, investment in human capital development through establishment of schools across the borderland. I think you'll realize along these areas that the number of schools are very few. The number of literate people is very low.
In 2017, the Intergovernmental Authority for Development, IGAD, launched a cross-border peace initiative. This is yet to bear fruit.
We have to really commit ourselves to identify priority projects, particularly that addresses conflict on very scarce resources, including water and rangelands, and of course develop further on that so that the fate and destiny for our people are developed together.
The task of ending conflicts is not for the next generation. It is not for future leaders. That task can only be placed on our shoulders. It is the collective responsibility for this generation and the current leadership.
Kenya is also concerned ongoing ethnic conflicts in pockets of Ethiopia are causing an influx of people fleeing to its border communities. Some who fled ethnic clashes in 2018 are yet to return home. The leaders of both countries say it is vital they each deal with their internal conflicts. They say this will allow a common purpose to develop, to integrate and participate in joint cross-border peace initiatives. Coletta Njohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
To Uganda now, and the country's health ministry says malaria is still a burden despite a drop in related deaths. Malaria-related deaths dropped from around 5,000 in 2017 to 3,000 last year in the East African nation. The health ministry is now shifting focus on eliminating the disease to near zero by spraying mosquito habitats like stagnant water sources. CGTN's Isabel Nakiria reports.
Cleaning malaria out of the community. This group is fighting the disposal of waste into drainage channels. Clogged drainages are breeding grounds for mosquitoes. Mastula Nachisozi leads the weekly cleaning exercise in this Kawempe slum.
When we are doing community cleanups, we have our notebooks. Then we can record that this person who stays here didn't come up to join us when we are doing community cleanup. And during the village meeting, the next village meeting, these people are summoned to the LOC and we have punishments which we give to these people.
Mastula's community-based organization also carries out education on the dangers of malaria. Slums lack basic necessities like clean water and proper sanitation. Mastula says her efforts are beginning to pay off.
The situation has changed a bit because many people didn't know about the causes of malaria. Most of them thought that if it rained and you're in the rain, that's when you get malaria. But because we have been doing a lot of sensitization, what causes malaria? So we've seen these cases decreasing.
Health officials also plan to embark on spraying stagnant water sources like this one with larvicides, which kills mosquitoes at the breeding stage. They hope this will reduce the spread of the disease. This year, the Ministry of Health is asking everyone to take personal steps to protect themselves from malaria with efforts like Mastula's.
Our emphasis is on empowering individuals to ensure they are not bitten by mosquitoes. If they fall sick, they seek care very early before it becomes severe, and they are mindful of public health, that they don't only protect themselves, but they protect the community in which they are.
Uganda has been promoting the use of mosquito nets and indoor spraying to control the spread of the disease. 26 million mosquito nets were delivered to households in 2018. But Mastula and her group say they will continue encouraging community participation with the hope of sweeping out malaria completely. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala.
Coming up in business news, the challenges facing ESCOM and possible solutions to mitigate South Africa's inconsistent power supply.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Consistent energy supply is the lifeblood of any economy, and it's something that's not happening in South Africa. Eskom, the country's power utility, has an aging fleet of coal-fired power stations. Massive delays in the completion of its two newest power plants have led to blackouts as well as government bailouts as Eskom struggles to pay off its massive debt burden. Here's CGTN's Angela Coppola with the details.
The current instability at Eskom isn't good news for heavy users of electricity like the steel sector.
You find that non-supply of electricity and increasing cost of electricity is becoming a problem to the subsectors because ferrochrome is a very important product that is being used to manufacture stainless steel, and stainless steel is a very important intermediary input that's being used to manufacture cars. So you've got this positive, negative knock-on effect and leading to increase in production cost.
The mining sector, on the other hand, is looking for its own solutions from renewable energy and topping that up with a mix of hybrids, diesel and fuel cells. It's a move away from Eskom and an attempt to lighten the fiscal load involved in bailing out the ailing utility.
I think the mining industry has come together and said, listen, we will deliver our own solutions. We'll pay for our own solutions. It doesn't have to come out of the national pocket. It doesn't have to come out of Treasury. And it doesn't have to cost everybody a massive power increase at every home user to get power into businesses again. What we need is to break the bureaucracy. We've got to cut the red tape and let industry solve the problem.
If solutions aren't found and found quickly, businesses will close and thousands of jobs will be lost. The mining sector estimates that it could lose more than 100,000 jobs if something isn't done. The potential fallout in the metals sector is as concerning.
The subcomponents within our cluster, including the ferrochrome, they spend about 3% of the electricity cost expenditures, about 3%. But if we were to look at the rand value of that, it's about 14 billion rand, which is a significant amount, and it tends to eat into the margins of businesses.
The problem, say economists, isn't the big players that can afford the tens and hundreds of millions needed to build their own power stations.
Our concern is for the small and medium enterprises. We have about over 60% to 65% of our businesses that are classified as small or medium enterprises. So our concern is that these businesses are going to close down, and there's a direct correlation between these businesses and employment that they offer. So we're very worried that the official unemployment rate of 27.1% is going to increase.
Business users and small consumers don't really worry themselves about whether the utility is solvent or not. They simply want electricity at an affordable price, and they're not getting that right now. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Egypt's economy is expected to grow 5.5% in the 2019-2020 fiscal year. The economy has since struggled to attract foreign investors since the 2011 uprising that unseated former President Hosni Mubarak. The country's all-private sector contracted for the 7th consecutive month, attributed to structural constraints that are keeping growth slightly subdued. Egypt has been implementing economic reforms as part of a 3-year, $12 billion agreement with the International Monetary Fund. The reforms included a value-added tax, cuts to energy subsidies, and a steep currency devaluation. South African telecoms firm MTN has announced that it has completed its Nigerian arms conversion from a private company to a public liability company. The conversion was a legal requirement and key milestone in the preparatory process for the listing on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Nigeria is MTN's biggest market with 52.3 million users and accounts for a third of the firm's annual profits. In December last year, it agreed to pay a $53 million payment to resolve a dispute in Nigeria, which resulted in a downfall in share price. In March, MTN announced its earnings for the 2018 financial year, recording revenue growth of 17.2%, earning $2.7 billion. An organization in South Africa is helping unemployed women onto their feet. Females make up more than 51% of the population register, but almost half are extremely poor. The clothing bank trains, mentors, and teaches women to run businesses with end-of-sale merchandise from retailers. It has worked with around 3,000 women over the last 9 years. CGTN's Julie Shire has more.
Very nice.
Tracy Gilmore and her partner started the clothing bank back in 2010 with just 10 women and an idea to empower females who could not find stable jobs.
We realised that there was this huge amount of excess stock within the retail supply chain, and we decided to try and use the stock as a tool to teach unemployed women how to run businesses and also as an income generation tool.
The clothing bank has become a source of income and inspiration for thousands of women in South Africa's townships. Many come here in desperation, believe the program confident and in charge of their own businesses.
I was not working. I was a stay-home mom with one child and 8 other siblings, which is my sister's children, my sisters who passed on in 2011. So they took me to counseling, took me through classes where I learned how to run my own business. So I don't want to lie, after a 2-year full that I was here, I learned a lot.
I'm so proud of me because you know what, when you've got nothing, everyone, you don't have that dignity. But coming to the clothing bank, I get my dignity back as a woman.
The program caught on like wildfire. The bank receives over 160,000 items a day from big chain stores, which are sold cheaply to women on the program.
Everybody that is recruited into our program gives back by working 1 day a week in the facility, and they help us process the stock. We debrand the stock, we obviously count it, put it into our system, and then hang it in our shop area ready for our beneficiaries to come and purchase that stock.
3,000 women have walked through the organization's doors in the last 9 years. The program has now expanded to include men who are trained to fix and resell appliances. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up after the break, how an exoskeleton is helping people living with disabilities learn how to walk again in South Africa.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way.
Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In South Africa, people living with disabilities are learning to walk again through the help of an exoskeleton. The exosuit is a robotic outfit which helps patients regain movements. It's used for rehabilitation after serious trauma or injury. The outfit, however, comes at a very hefty price, putting it out of reach for most South Africans. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
The exosuit came into the spotlight in South Africa when 16-year-old Brandon Beek broke his neck in 2012. He was treated in the United States, but on his return home, Beek started the Walking with Brandon Foundation to help others.
They did a lot of fundraising and purchased the exoskeleton and equipment to help Brandon, but then to also help the state of care and help others in his position. So it started essentially with Brandon, and then we've built slowly but surely to well over 100 patients.
The robotic exoskeleton fits on a patient's body and helps them walk again.
It's primarily designed for any level of paralysis, even if it's a spinal cord injury or a stroke. Those are the two main injuries that it's designed for. And I think the main benefits are threefold. The number one is the neurological recovery, so through walking and the high repetition of steps. And the number two would be secondary complications. And the third one is psychological.
17 years ago, I have a rugby injury and it caused me paralyzed. So it was in the beginning very tough to accept, but I was get into that exosuit, and the first time when I get up and stand, it was so amazing.
The exosuit stabilizes patient joints and helps strengthen weakened muscles. The suit is used around the world for rehabilitation, but in South Africa, unfortunately, the suit is no longer operational due to funding problems.
Now that the study is finished, then the funds have obviously stopped coming through. So we're at a current point where we need to pay for maintenance and for an upgrade of the exoskeleton, which can cost over $100,000. So we're currently doing fundraising to get that new suit in and keep our patients walking.
The robotic suit was helping many here. Now that funds have run out, the dream of standing and walking again has been short-lived. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Nigeria lags behind globally in having a vibrant reading culture despite producing several internationally acclaimed authors like Wole Soyinka and Chinua Achebe. CGTN's Philly Haza has more from Abuja.
This is one of the few renowned libraries in the Nigerian capital, Abuja. It has space to accommodate more than 50 readers at a time, but barely 20 people come here to read on an average day. Jeremiah is one of those book lovers who visits regularly. He says despite the prevalence of the internet, access to a physical collection still has its advantages.
I use the library these days because, number one, the serenity I obtain here, and number two, I have access to some information that are scrambled. If I want to get them online, perhaps I have to pay or subscribe. But in the library here, I can have access to them for free, and also some archival informations that are very old that you might not find the digital copy online can be accessed in the library.
Nigeria is currently rated by the World Culture Score Index as one of the world's worst countries in terms of its reading culture, especially when it comes to reading traditional books. And with the advent of the internet, the conventional method of reading or accessing information in libraries is gradually fading away. Salamatu Sule is an author and book reviewer. She says this trend is as a result of various online platforms that tend to distract many young people.
Whether we like it or not, institutions are also supposed to have created digital platforms. So therefore, they are supposed to have solutions such like providing mechanism to restrain an average reader from so many social media handles, so thereby restricting them to some of these critical books that you're supposed to be reading.
The internet, though, has helped some readers who no longer have to own a physical book to acquire content anymore. Still, Sule believes institutions like schools and colleges could do more to help develop reading culture in Nigeria, such as limiting social media access.
There are so much factors that, take most readers away from reading their books. I mean, critical books that are information savvy and culturally, engaging. Rather, it's the other way around, to go to chat and engage themselves in other social media.
In order to help sustain the reading culture in Nigeria, libraries like this are now reworking the environment to better serve online readers. Experts say it is important to take advantage of the digital era to inculcate the culture of reading early enough in people in order to transform them into better informed, empowered and productive citizens of the country. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
And ahead in sports. City wins the Manchester derby to storm back to the top of the English Premier League.